I feel like we've gone through a lot of chaos together, though, as a couple since we were dating, and then even before we got married, and then, yeah, I mean, obviously, I would say the chaos is a little less now, and I'm thankful for that and grateful for that.
That's awesome.
God has really been working in our lives to kind of get rid of some of that.
Welcome to the Midweek Motivation Podcast, where we bring practical help for your faith and life. Here's today's episode.
Hey guys, welcome to this week's Midweek Motivation. My name is Jess, and I am here with today's guests, Patrick and Cheyenne.
Hello.
And we are talking about relationships and like living each other in chaos.
Yeah.
So Patrick and Cheyenne head up our young adults ministry, and it's really exciting to have you guys here.
Yeah.
I'm glad
For sure.
Awesome.
I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Well, so this episode, we're talking about loving each other in chaos, like relationships, right? And you guys are like in that phase, right, where you're in like young adults. You both have full-time jobs. You've got a family. You've got a daughter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about what's been going on with you guys.
Well, lately it's been a little bit of a just kind of working and doing young adults. Like those are probably the two main focuses that we've been really involved in.
Yeah.
And I would say life is increasing, like in a good way, you know, like just working our way through life and trying to increase our circumstances to be better and better every day. So, we moved out about a year ago, got our own apartment after getting married and stuff. And so it, the next thing is on the horizon, and we're just
Hopefully buying a house.
Hopefully buying a house soon.
That's
nice.
exciting. Yeah.
We have goals.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool. We're talking a little bit about like some like regular lifetime chaos stuff that's going on, just like having a young family and stuff. What's something that you guys wouldn't mind sharing that kind of is relatable, do you think, in your family right now?
Chaos. I mean, I think of a couple things. Obviously, having she's not even really a toddler anymore. Our daughter, she's 5 now.
Yeah.
That is like different degrees of chaos at like different life stages.
Yep.
Yeah.
I feel like we've gone through a lot of chaos together, though, as a couple since we were dating, and then even before we got married, and then, yeah, I mean, obviously, I would say the chaos is a little less now, and I'm thankful for that and grateful for that.
That's awesome.
God has really been working in our lives to kind of get rid of some of that, but I mean, I just think like when we still lived with your mom, that was chaotic. There was a lot of
that was tons of chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Having a lot of people in one house is hard to navigate when you've got so many different personalities trying to, coexist in one little area.
Yeah.
It's definitely difficult while raising a little child.
Yeah.
Well, and imagine like we are it's Cheyenne and I and our daughter Milani, we're our own family.
Yep.
And so when your own family is confined essentially to a bedroom, like that's kind of your safe haven. That's your zen
from the
area
chaos.
from where everybody else lives. Because every time you go out to go watch TV in the living room or make a sandwich in the kitchen, you're entering kind of the public space. So your zen is really confined, and so like it was a huge relief to be able to kind of look at our finances and be like, you know what, we could actually afford to rent an apartment right now, and that would free up a lot of our stress and stuff.
Yeah, that's incredible. I can relate to it.
Yeah.
I was a young parent, and I also started out living in my family's home, so I 100% can understand.
Yeah.
So, like, going through all that stuff and even just getting to where you are right now, you have to have, have just a wealth of knowledge and how to navigate some of that stuff. What do you think is always learning, obviously, but what do you think is the biggest lesson that you learned in dealing with relationships in those kinds of circumstances, whether it's between you guys or even family or people outside of that?
I feel like patience and reflection, self-reflection, is a big one, because although you may not get along with someone, or maybe you do, just in that point in time you don't, you have to, sometimes someone does something that bothers you and you're just like, oh, why do you always do that?
Yeah.
And it's, always at this time. It's inconvenient. But at the same time, you might do something that bothers someone in just a small way or maybe a big way. And I definitely, patience and self-reflection are a big one. I mean, that's just with any relationship, any point in time.
Yeah.
I'm still learning patience. I don't have a lot of patience, but Patrick helps me with my patience. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say, for me, and I don't know if she'll really like my answer to this, because I am so chill about most things, and she's very much like a take action type of person. And so whenever there's a conflict or a bad circumstance or something happens, I'm always just like, all right, let's see how this plays out, kind of thing. And I feel like in a way, I have a lot of faith in those areas when things go bad. For the most part, I really need to internalize and take time to kind of process before I'm ready to take action.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I want to make sure I make the right decision on this.
Yeah.
And not just kind of take the bait. Because I think sometimes the enemy does that, where he's dangling something in front of you. You're like, hey, if you do this.
I'm very I want it to happen now. I'm very quick to judge things and quick to, and sometimes it's not, always the right answer. But that's why, he's here. And we help each other through that. So it's...
Yeah.
It's really nice because he's a go with the flow. I am most definitely not go with the flow. I'm like, we're going with the flow. Okay. It's kind of a bumpy ride, and I'm like, oh, that wasn't that bad. Okay. All right. Well, I guess I should have just gone with the flow to begin with. Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that. That's one of my favorite things about relationships, with engaging with my husband too, is I noticed that if you can recognize the strengths that the other person has, you have to be able to recognize it and then see the good in it so that you can engage together.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad that we have that relationship though in our marriage, because I might at sometimes be a little bit too dismissive about circumstances, and then she might be too frantic about them sometimes.
Yeah.
So I kind of cool her off so she doesn't do anything rash, but she also kind of helps me see the reality of the situation sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't know, there was one time in particular where we had our bills to pay, and it was right around Christmas time. And so I paid my car payment, but it didn't take out of our account immediately. And so we went out and bought Christmas presents and stuff. And then by the time it finally took out of the bank account, there wasn't enough in there anymore. And so we're like, oh crap, our bill is due a couple days after Christmas. What the heck are we going to do? And so I was kind of like, all right, let's see what we got here. And Cheyenne's like, I'm going to go take a bunch of stuff and return it and go ham. She's like, we're going to go to 8 different stores and we're going to return it all. And we did some of that. But then I also was like, my grandma generally sends a Christmas check. Let me just check the mail. And so I checked the mail, and of course there was a card in it, and there was a present for our daughter, and there was a check. And so I'm like, okay, God's looking out for me at least, or if God hasn't, then my grandma is. So,
maybe God is through your grandma.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So awesome. I didn't want to go crazy and just start, because there was also some things that I knew she had got for me for Christmas, and I was like, man, I really don't want to let that go.
But he did. He made some sacrifices.
Yeah, I did.
And then later when things came around, then I was like, okay.
We were able to have a little late Christmas.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's real cool. It seems like you guys have a system worked out where you guys have gotten to a place where you understand each other really well and can navigate that stuff kind of maybe a little bit easier. Probably not perfect, but I mean,
never
who's perfect?
Right? Exactly.
What if somebody was, if you were to give advice to somebody who is working through trying to figure some of that stuff out, what advice would you give them?
Definitely a big one. Just that I noticed through, like, just being with Patrick, like, period, is, like, don't give up. Because I feel like people want to just, they're like, that's too difficult. Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
It's like, that's when you're putting in the work, is when you don't give up. So I think,
Yeah, that's kind of a testament to our relationship. Kind of going through some of the really hard things together and coming out on the other side brings you really close. I think of like Men's Alliance when we're working out, and then our brotherhood in Men's Alliance is very strong because we kind of suffer together for like 30 minutes or so. And
awesome.
but also like in our life, just some of the really hard things that we had to go through, and being able to come out on the other side and be like, okay, we're unified in this way now because of that. It's like, to call back to Men's Alliance again, it's the iron sharpens iron proverb. That's like part of their motto. So
Yeah.
But yeah, any advice that I would give to somebody, don't give up is a really good one. I would also say just recognize each other's strengths, know what you're good at. Meet in the middle if you're kind of two extremes, because I think in a lot of ways Cheyenne and I are opposites in some ways, but we share a lot of similar life experiences. So we're like able to relate to each other, but we also like have very different ways of like dealing with those similar experiences. So yeah, I would just say like recognize the fact that their differences might actually like be really beneficial to you, and your strengths might be really beneficial to them.
Yeah. Awesome. Do you have advice or like a kind of like a rule of thumb or a way that you guys engage when you're working through some of that you've learned that you could share?
I think we're still too young to have a system worked out for that. Maybe we're in the middle of building the system right now. I would say, yeah, I think that faith is a really big part of it, for me at least. Like I said, I'm very go with the flow.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just having faith that the circumstance doesn't determine, like, really anything else. It might just be, like, a temporary...
Yeah.
It might not be what you want.
Yeah.
But I'm quick to kind of accept that. So help each other in like being able to accept circumstances and like, yeah.
Yeah. So
if that makes any sense at all.
It does. So think about the last moment where you guys had something come up and how you engaged with each other. Can you pull anything from that? Like how you decided to approach the issue, or
maybe the wedding?
The wedding.
Remember?
That's
like
the day before
chaos.
the wedding?
The day before the wedding. No, yeah,
talk about chaotic.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, explain it because he's so good at explaining it, but it's crazy. Yeah, no, go ahead.
This is a good one. This is a good one, guys. Sorry, I'm breaking the fourth wall, but this is a good one. But anyway, the day before our wedding, so we had it. We were blessed by Bart and Bettina.
So blessed.
They offered to let us use their lake house up in Scappoose for our wedding for free. So that was awesome. Bettina was also offering some photography and stuff. So we're really thankful for them and everything that they did during our wedding time. and continue to do. They're just awesome people. But so what happened is there's like a trifecta of things. So when the wedding was coming, Bart and Bettina they had a gravel driveway and they were paving it. And it was really hot because it was summertime. So the pavement was not solidifying. And so one thing was Bart was a little worried that we weren't going to be able to park at the lake house because of the pavement. Luckily, he has like a shuttle that can pick us up. But I was like, dang, that kind of sucks. And then at the same time, they were trying to, they were like about to have a legal, there was like a legal thing that was happening with the kind of the legitimacy of their venue, even though it's their house. So it's kind of a weird situation because they live there, but they also use it as a venue. So there was a weird legal situation that was happening. And kind of in the midst of all that, Bart didn't want to have a big event there because he didn't want to stir up anything with the neighbors or with the county or anything like that. And so the day before the wedding, I get a call from Bart. And he says, and I'm so thankful for all that he did in this situation because he really took care of it for us. But he called me and said, hey, I don't think we can do the lake house, but I talked to Pastor Gabe. He said we can do it at the church. If the church wants to charge you at all for using the space, I'll cover it. And so he really helped us out. And then I realized, I was like, well, so our cake is being delivered for free because it's really close to where the lake house is, where the bakery is. And so I was like, well, we're going to have to figure that out. And so Bart offered to pick up the cake for us and bring it. And then so Cheyenne was out with her maid of honor. What were you guys doing? Were you shopping?
I think we were out. We might have been shopping. It was either that or we were doing the bachelorette stuff because it was, I think we were just painting.
It was the day before the wedding, so we were probably just getting ready.
Yeah.
So I give her a call, say, hey, we have to change venues. And that was when you start to realize how many details there are to a wedding because you're like, oh, change venues, that's not that hard. And then you realize, oh, we have to message all of our guests. And we have to make sure that the catering gets there to the right venue. We have to make sure the cake gets to the right venue. We have to So that was, talk about chaotic. So we ended up during the rehearsal just letting everybody know in our wedding party, and then we
whole everybody that we've invited, hey, so it's not in Skepoo.
Yeah, we
just mass email, mass text message.
Which it kind of worked out for the better because I feel like a lot of people that were traveling, because I think my mom traveled and my grandma as well. So for those people, they didn't have to worry about getting up to Skepoo. So they could just stick in town.
Yeah.
So that was handy. But yeah, I think that was just to kind of bring it back to how to handle all that chaos. It was very much, I'm very thankful for the people that we had because it wouldn't have been possible without
he was
them.
Also very when he called, I was I thought someone got hurt or something. He's just I've got bad news, and I'm like, okay,
she just kind of laughed when I told her.
Yeah, he told me all of that, and I was just like, okay, all right, well, let's go ahead and do it. Who do we need to?
Denial is the first stage of grief.
And I'm usually one of those people that's oh no, that should break me, but no. I was at this point, I was already worrying about the flowers. I was already worrying about all of this other stuff, and I was just the Lord's got it. He's got it. I mean, who else has got it?
Yeah. So yeah, I think in that situation, I definitely felt God had put the right people in our lives for the right time because, man, the amount of people that were willing to help for free for our wedding was insane to me. And they were so gracious in all the chaotic changes. All of our guests were gracious in the chaotic. I don't think anybody said anything about. And everybody had a great time and it went really well and it was fun.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
God really came through on that one.
Very cool. Yeah. So some of the things that I see in what it is that you guys have talked about several times actually is number one, faith and trusting in God. Like your faith is a huge thing, right? Yeah. I loved, Cheyenne, that what you pointed out to begin with, right, is faith and also patience and self-reflection. I think that's pretty huge. Like personal, you got to start with yourself, right?
Yeah, and it's hard.
It is. Yeah. It is. It takes a lot of humility. I'm not always good at it either. Just going to be transparent there. But, and then also like the fact that you guys can look at each other and recognize through, I think, the eyes, it sounds like, of your faith and personal humility that the person that you're sitting across from like has strengths that maybe you don't have and vice versa. And you guys really lean into that, which I think is beautiful. I think that that's like one of the big things to huge success, right? Is to recognize that you just can't, you're not the end all be all.
Yeah. There's no I in team.
Yeah, exactly. No. That's so cool. Yeah. And I love, Patrick, that you called your wife to be and we're like, hey, I think we got most of this figured out. So you didn't even actually really have that much to stress about it.
Luckily you had Bart and Gabe to figure out the big stuff. And then you had me to recognize the cake was going to have to get figured out.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, we pretty much got it all taken care of, but just letting you know this is happening.
Yeah.
And we still have a big task of figuring out who RSVP'd.
Oh, yeah.
At the
texting
same time,
all of them.
the way that his voice sounded, because I remember he sounded very like, he sounded like me. And so I was like, I think maybe it's one of those things where you like kind of flip flop and you're like, well, if one's kind of feeling like that nervousness, that panic, then you need to be the level-headed one. You need to, kind of step up and like, shift the weight a little bit.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love it.
I'm glad we have that ability because normally I'm the level-headed one. So I'm glad it's reassuring to me to know that when I'm freaking out, she has the capability to also not freak out.
So. Oh, that's awesome. Building trust.
Compliment each other too. So
that's cool. And then the last thing that I heard you say a lot was the people that you have around you, which I think is incredible.
Seriously.
How is that in particular been a real great support? Like you've given a couple of examples, but like as your relationship has grown, have you is there anything that you can pull out of like how you engage with the people around you that you could share with others?
Yeah, I mean, my first thought it's about group season right now.
Yeah.
To tie in groups, like the community that you have is insane. That like. To just kind of, it's like a hammock. You're like laying in a hammock of your community because, man, we have, I in particular am a part of a couple different kind of sub-communities within Westside Community Church, little groups and stuff, within the worship team and within our young adults group.
Yeah.
And like, it's just really great to see the kind of support that you receive and are also able to give in those groups. Like in our worship team group that we have on Tuesday nights, we kind of practice through the songs, and like a lot of Sunday morning rehearsals, very like, it's just business. Like we gotta make sure, every cue is being hit. And, but that group gives us time to really grow and connect with each other. And support each other, and like that was one time where I felt like I was surprised by the kind of support that people gave because people would share something that they were really having trouble going through, and then we all like stood in a circle and had a prayer moment for that. And Tony Goyburn, who kind of leads that group, he's a hand holder when we pray. And there's something about like physically touching you, like someone when you're praying. There's just like a stronger connection there.
Yeah.
And then even in our young adults group, just like a lot of people that kind of come into the young adults sometimes are really shy.
Yeah.
And so, it's a new community of people your age. And so you don't really know exactly what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
And lately I've been seeing a lot of deep relationships start to kind of come out of that.
Yeah.
It's really cool to see, like, as the leader too, you're kind of worried about, like, dang, how's the group doing?
Yeah.
But to see, like, people are, meeting up outside of group to go, like, have a little Bible study or, like, go hang out and get coffee or something. So there's, like, friendships that are coming out of that. And then, as they get older and, like, start to go through life a little bit, they're going to come across hardships, and now they have people that they can reach out to.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and you've shared lots of, like, you're a testament, really, of how important having that is and how valuable it is. That's cool. I've had the same experiences, so that's cool. Yeah. Well, you guys, thank you so much for joining and being willing to share. I really appreciate it, and for sharing your wisdom. And maybe you feel like it's like you haven't been at it for very long, but man, I can tell that you guys work at it real hard, and that you're intentional, and that's really awesome. So
yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
it was fun.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks for sharing.
Sweet.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Midweek Motivation. To make sure you don't miss any content in the future, please subscribe, share, and if you enjoyed this, give us a like, and consider popping by a Westside service some weekend. You can find out more at westsidecommunitychurch.com.